films as well, and then maybe the future of DUTV. How do those topics sound to you?
Yeah, that's great. That that pretty much covers it all, Elliot.
Good deal.
I can't think of anything else.
All right, we're excited to have you on here for sure. We're streaming this on YouTube for right now, and then it'll come out on all the podcast outlets. What, Jordan? Like in about a week?
Yeah, that's probably a good estimate.
Okay.
Cool.
Did you go live? Did you go live yet, Jordan?
Yeah, I'm working on running that right now.
Okay. So we'll go live here on YouTube and get everything set up, and then we'll officially start the podcast. Where do you live, out of curiosity, John?
Hernando, Mississippi.
Okay.
Which is about 15 minutes from the border of Tennessee.
Okay.
So I live a good ways from national headquarters, but I'm a Mississippi guy, and I just moved over here when we first came back to Mississippi and just stayed.
Wonderful. Good.
Sweet. All right, we are live.
Okay, I'm going to put out some links real quick. I haven't got the notification yet. Where's the notification at?
We'll see what YouTube does, but it's up there right now. What's up?
I'll go find it.
What's up, Dylan? Thanks for joining us. Alrighty, live stream. Got a good one for you tonight, so stay tuned. Gonna push out some links, and then we'll start recording.
Jordan, you might check the title. The title I'm showing on the live stream is the letter A.
Yeah, that's what it is right now. Okay. I'll go ahead and change it in post, but
is that a scarlet letter?
Now, Streamlabs unfortunately changed how they did it, and you know how that is. They don't let anybody know. So, but besides that, looks like we're good to go. So, I'm just gonna say hey to a couple guys. What's going on, Caleb? What's going on, Duckalope Outdoors? Thanks for joining us. We got Tim Cochran, the Fellowship of the Duck Gun meme creator. Then we got Roy. What's going on, Roy? Thanks for joining us.
Did you see the one he put out today?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about that one.
I thought it was fantastic.
You have created a monster.
I don't know, man. You've always been a monster.
Tim Cochran, you keep up shenanigans like that, and I may revoke your Kansas hunting license.
You know you are an admin of the group. You can just, delete away or whatever.
Yeah, but I don't like to be a dictator.
The ductator.
What's
going on?
Watching.
Pot pie. Chicken pot pie.
Her and my dad are down in Texas right now.
Awesome. How's it going,
They're
Bo?
come home soon.
Peter, thanks for joining us. All right, well, Jay, how's it going? I guess let's go ahead and roll with it. So,
all links are out.
all righty. You recording on your end, Elliot?
Oh, I'm glad you reminded me.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. I thought, I was like, no, I'm not going to forget that. Yeah, okay. All right. I am recording the audio on my end.
Awesome. And before we get going, just want to say a quick word to the live stream crew. So, guys, I got the new setup. Let me know in the comments how you like it. Switched around the whole setup, and you guys can see the soundboard here and everything. So, should be cool for the behind-the-scenes look of the podcast recording. At least that's what I'm hoping. So, alrighty, let's go ahead and get into it. Actually, let's do sound check real quick. Can I get a sound check from you, John?
Sound check 1, 2, 3, 4.
Alrighty. Elliot, can I get one from you as well?
Check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Alrighty. Looks like we're good on all fronts.
Hey guys.
What's going on, folks? Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Duck Gun Podcast. I'm Jordan from Duck Gun Chronicles, your host, and alongside me, per usual, my co-host, Elliot, Graybeard, the grayest of beards from Freelance Duck Hunting, and our guest tonight is John. How you doing tonight, John?
Jordan, I'm doing great. First, I would like to thank y'all for having me on. I listened to some of the podcasts when I knew I was going to be coming on here, and I tell you what, you guys do a great job, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. Definitely excited to have you on tonight and talk about everything you got going on with DU and DU TV. So real quick,
Great.
As we get started with the podcast, let's go ahead and if you can let people know, I guess, who you are and a little bit what you got going on, and specifically, let's touch on DU TV there.
Okay, my name is John Gordon, and my title at Ducks Unlimited is Senior Communications Specialist, which, I don't know, it sounds fancy, but what I primarily do for DU is I'm production coordinator for DU TV and DU Films. And what that really entails is I put together all the logistics for the show. Who's going to be on there, the locations, put all the details together, and work with the production company to produce the final product that you see.
Awesome. So that's something that me and Elliot have been watching for a while with DUTV, and it sounds like a pretty cool job and everything you got going on with that.
Yeah, I can say that it's really cool. It's almost like I've got my own TV show. You know?
That's cool.
And so I get to choose the locations and the people involved, and I really kind of think to myself, what would I want to see as a 40-plus year waterfowl hunter? What would excite me to really keep my attention on the screen, and I just kind of go from there.
Definitely, that's
John, I am a longtime fan of DUTV, and so I'm kind of curious. Can you give us a little history of it? How long has it been going? When did it get started? When did your involvement start? Just kind of give us a background of the show.
DUTV is pretty historic, I guess, in waterfowl hunting because it's the longest running waterfowl TV show in existence. Started back in 1998. You guys remember the first co-host of the show? Actually, he was just the host. Was Jameson Parker?
Yeah.
Simon and Simon. He had done some video work for DU, and when they decided to do a TV show, he was the first host. And so he just traveled around and he did a lot of what we do now, to capture some really cool hunts and then bring the conservation message to the people out there that we're really trying to do of what Ducks Unlimited does for wetlands conservation. So it really started there, and it's just kept going and going and going. And what I think we're most proud of the show is that, all these years later, guys that started watching 15, 20 years ago are still with the show and still love it.
Yeah, and now the thing about I don't remember when I started watching. I definitely know that I was watching back then. I got avid when you guys started putting them online. You could go back and watch. I think 2007 was the first season that you could watch when it was online. And you could click from year to year to year. And I remember back around 2007, 8, 9, 10, every year I'd go back and watch all of those episodes. Where was DUTV running when it first came out? What channels was it running on? And how did that progress until you guys started kind of getting more internet-based?
Yeah, it started out on the Nashville network, TNN, which is now Versus, I believe, is what that network became. So it was really part of, a country music, programming station, and so they really, DUTV was it came on. I remember it came on Saturday mornings, I believe, because I started watching it too when it first came out, and really looked forward to it every episode. And it was on Saturday mornings. The first time they would show it was, and then it later got on the Outdoor Channel, and then now it's on Pursuit. And then, of course, like you said, every episode that we put out now is uploaded to the DU site, and then also to our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's definitely done really well on the YouTube as well here. Seeing those come out on there. So, but I guess at what part did you come on board with DU and doing that?
I first started working for DU in October of 2018, so it hasn't been that long. I had developed a relationship with my current boss, James Powell, through my days at Avery and Bandit, and Eric Kessler, who was in my position, he moved over to the magazine full time as an editor. So to open up a position, and since I had really been involved in the waterfowling and the waterfowling industry for quite a long time, it was just a natural fit that I would be good to work with the TV show and the films. I got have a lot of connections from all that over the years of people all over the country, and I have a good understanding of waterfowling and all the different types of waterfowling that you can do. So, it just gave me a unique insight into producing the show.
So you were producing then 18 and 19 and 19 and 20. So this was your second year as the producer the past season?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then really, they had already had all the shows pretty well locked in by the time I got there. I did some tweaking on some stuff and worked on a couple of episodes, finalizing some details. But for the most part, it was done. So this past season was my real first one to really get my feet wet on my own as far as putting together all the details and logistics for the show. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the footage from the episodes to see what comes out. And I tell you what, we're not through with this season. We decided to do a spring snow goose episode, which is going to take place. Well, they'll start filming that on Friday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the show's still going on right now.
Where are you guys filming at?
This will be in Missouri at Habitat Flats.
Oh, great!
Interesting thing came up on that deal was, well, I've known Tony Vandemore a long time from my days at Avery, but one of our board members from Delaware, he put together a party of guys to go down there, and one of his guys pulled out, and that basically opened the door for us to be able to slide in there into that party and film this hunt. And one of the premier locations for snow goose hunting in the country. I talked to Tony yesterday, and he said they've probably got between 600,000 and 700,000 birds in the area right now. So it's going to be quite a spectacle. The hatch wasn't great, and it's been a bit of a struggle this year for a lot of folks. But overall, I think just being in that location and knowing that Tony is going to get on some birds. So I feel pretty confident it's going to make for a great episode.
So you guys are just finishing up filming for the 1920 season. So next season, the videos we watch, those are kind of be your first batch of babies that you're putting out there for everyone to see then.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. This is my first season, and it was really a lot of fun putting it together. And we went all over the place, from, started out in North Dakota and ended up, from there in Ontario, Canada, back to Saskatchewan, back south to Idaho, Texas, even went to Arizona. We had a really cool show that a lot of folks are going to love, I think, is the one we did in Arizona that we actually stayed in Tombstone. So this is southern Arizona, within, right there near the Mexican border. And in the desert, to where people, you really don't want to think about as being a waterfowling destination, but it's a really cool part of the country, and they've got a lot of ducks.
Yeah.
Awesome. So here's the $1 million question. So, what do we got to do to get Elliot on an episode of Ducks Unlimited?
Elliot on an episode of Ducks Unlimited. Well, I might know somebody has some control over that.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure we can work something out. I'm working on the next season right now.
Oh, wow.
And this one's going to be really, really cool. I've already got stuff lined up for Washington State, Texas again. I think we're going to start there. I'm trying to get an episode together for North Dakota for August for the, really the first season that opens up in the country, which is early Canada in August in North Dakota. I've got Prince Edward Island, Canada, lined out with a longtime friend of mine, Paul McKinnon, up there. So it's I'm on it right now, and I hope to have the entire season pretty well lined out by within the next 30 days, I would think.
Oh, wow. You guys definitely have your scheduled out pretty far in advance.
Yeah, and that's a disadvantage, but it's just kind of the nature of DUTV. There's so many moving parts to it because we have to bring the Ducks Unlimited side of it into it, and you've got a separate production company and other people involved. So I can't just sit there on go saying, well, when you get birds, we'll be there. It's different than that you have to really plan this way in advance because of people's, they have other things they're doing, jobs, careers, and you've got to bring these people together. So you've got to plan this well in advance. So sometimes it works out great, sometimes it doesn't. So you just have to roll with the punches on that and just really have a lot of different locations planned out so you really can get a full 13-episode season.
It's amazing you guys are as successful as you are because, I've done some hunt trips and everything, and when you have to set hunt trips on a calendar date to accommodate everyone going, man, that's way more difficult to have success because, you may think it's a great weekend and set it in advance a year, but the Ducks, they may have some different ideas,
Oh, yeah. It really, went to North Dakota in late September. Well, they had record rainfall, and it really made things difficult up there because you had water everywhere in areas that really don't have a lot of water normally, to where those birds are really concentrated in those pothole areas early in the year because all those birds are really residents at that point. But at this point, this year there was water everywhere, so they were scattered all over the place. So we really had to scout a tremendous amount and to really find some birds to get on. And we were up there for 5 days, and a couple of the hunts just really were nothing. And so we were scratching around, and we turned out a good show, but it just took a lot of effort to do that. And that's just, like I said, for us, it's just kind of the nature of the beast because we just can't wait around and hope that the birds are going to be in a location and we just go then. It's just, like I said, just too many moving parts.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as a producer, do you go on every single trip and you're just running the logistics of everything? And do you also hunt on these trips, or you just find the scenes? What is your role hunt to hunt?
Well, I would love to be able to go on all of them, but they're just not budget money for that, for me to travel to every one of them. But, I'll try to go on. I'll pick and choose 3 or 4 different hunts per year that I want to go on. And, most of the time I'm just there, giving support and helping out where I can. I have to pull the trigger on a few of those hunts, and that's a lot of fun, but that's not really, that's not the reason I'm there. I'm just really there to help the guys try to put on a quality episode. So this past year I went to North Dakota, the Texas coast, my old stomping grounds, which was pretty cool. I hadn't really been back down there to really do much hunting in a long time. Let's see, where else did I go for DUTV? Let's see, I was in Arkansas, pretty close by deal there. And that's about it. And I did a couple DU Films shoots as well.
Awesome.
Being as though that you're, so heavily involved in DU Films and you came on the podcast and everything, I think it would be really great if we kind of dug a little bit more into your background to let our listeners know kind of where did you grow up, how did you get into waterfowling, and just kind of go through what was your life like up until the point that you got to do UTV?
That's a big question, Elliot. Because it's like I think this season for me, if I'm right about this, was season either 40 or 41 in my life. I just turned 51 the other day, so I started out when I was 10, just in Mississippi. My uncle, my mother's brother, is the guy that really introduced me to it. He grew up as a quail hunter in the hills of Mississippi near Winona in Montgomery County, and that's what everybody did. Then there was tremendous amount of wild quail. Everybody had pointing dogs. My grandfather had English pointers and setters, and they really hunted quail extensively. Then as he got older, he ended up, one of his first jobs was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he had befriended a guy that was a big duck hunter, and his family had a big farm. So he took him duck hunting, and my uncle fell in love with it. So fast forward, I'm a little kid coming up, and my dad was basically a deer hunter. He didn't duck hunt. So I had been on a few deer hunting trips with him, and my uncle took me duck hunting, and it really if you think back in your life at moments where everything changed, for me, it was those early duck hunts when I was a 10-year-old kid in Mississippi with my uncle and his buddies. That I just fell in love with it so much that it became my entire life. To where I'm involved in some sort of waterfowling 365 days a year, really. As far as planning for the show, working for DU, hunting, working with dogs. I've got a young golden retriever that I'm currently involved in hunt testing with. He got his HRCH back in November, and we're working on Master Hunter now.
Right.
Anyway, so my entire life revolves around waterfowling at some point or another. But so anyway, I started out young, 10-year-old kid, and ended up getting transplanted to Texas when I was 12. So, when you're a kid, you don't really have a choice on where you live. So,
can I stop you real
moved
quick?
out that way. Sure, go ahead.
So something that really intrigued me about what you're saying is, and it sounds too good to move on without really diving into that a little bit deeper. But you're kind of talking about how life changing it was to remember those hunts in Mississippi. I think you said with your dad and uncles. I mean, can you just dive into that a little bit deeper? Like, what was the hunting like at that time in your life?
Well, it was fascinating to me. Like I said, I had never seen anything like that. I'm a 10-year-old kid, just at that point, play a little league baseball, then a little here or there, going to school and all. You're just a little kid. And then I go out there to a blind. It's Tarsa, Mississippi. It's in the heart of the Mississippi Delta, not too far from Yazoo City. And just watching those birds fly and cut through the air, I was immediately fascinated by it. Just totally enthralled by it. Didn't have a gun in my hand, anything. I was freezing to death. It just seemed like it was colder back then. We're talking about late 1970s, early 80s. And it just seemed like every time we went out, we were breaking ice, and it was just, and I had old hand-me-down stuff. My uncle had an old pair of those old canvas and rubber waders, man, that were just, talk about freeze yourself to death in them. There was no youth gear or anything, no youth clothing for kids. These kids these days have got it made. So, I'm wearing some old hand-me-down stuff, old army jacket or whatever was passed down, way too big, freezing to death, and absolutely loved every second of it. And that's what got me hooked, and it was the camaraderie too. It's my uncle had a real close circle of friends, and those people are still his friends today. So I've known some of those guys basically all my life for over 40 years. And now I'm kind of at 51. I'm the youngster, and they're all in their 70s. And to still be with those guys and have a good time with them is fantastic. And it's all because of duck hunting. It's all because those guys took me out there and took me under their wing and made me a part of the crowd, made me a part of the group. It was such a great experience to begin with that I just couldn't get enough of it. And it just continued on till when I was in Texas, a couple of years later. And, that's a whole nother story we'll go into. But that's where it all started.
Awesome.
So when I know that you said you got into working with Bandit, how did that opportunity arise? Did you end up going to college, or how did you transition from your early years to your more professional life?
Well, that's a great question, Elliot, because I wasn't going down a path that really would have taken me anywhere there initially. I graduated from Mississippi State. I'm a communications major from state, but I'd come back from Texas at that point to go to school over at state. My mom and dad both went to school there, and I love Mississippi so much that I really wanted to come back and go to school there versus A&M or Texas out there. So I came back, went to school there, ended up working for my uncle who introduced me to hunting. He was at that point he was mainly a big home builder. At that point, he's more of a commercial real estate developer now, but he was into home building. So I started out working for him after college, building new homes as a construction superintendent, and we continued to hunt together and all that. But later on, I ended up not really liking the construction business. It really wasn't for me. So I ended up going back out to Texas. And at that point, that's where another really, really life-changing event happened for me. When I grew up in Houston, different times as far as the way the media was. Now you got the social media, you got stuff like this, podcasting and all that. It didn't exist. I tell you, what we had were the outdoor writers of the newspapers. And the Houston Chronicle had a great set of writers. It was Chris, Joe Doggett and Doug Pike and Shannon Tompkins. And I just really recently talked to Shannon Tompkins not too long ago. I got to meet him for the first time. He just retired from the Chronicle. As papers have really gone, kind of the way of the dinosaur in a lot of ways. But anyway, those guys were really, I poured over everything they wrote every week. And they had a big outdoor section in the Chronicle on Thursdays and a big section on Sundays. And especially Doug Pike, who was the former guide down there on the Texas coast, used to write about a lot with waterfowling, specifically goose hunting, because in those days, the Texas coast was the snow goose and speckle-belly capital of the world, really. Places like Eagle Lake, Texas, and Katy, Texas, and Bay City, Texas, were where everybody came who wanted to hunt light geese. There was no conservation season or anything like that. It was an entirely different situation then. But those guys, really made the Goose Guide seem like, just an incredible thing to be. The guy that everybody looked up to, take them out in the field and get their birds. Guys like Jimmy Reel and Clifton Tyler, Larry Gore, Butch Wagner. I mean, these guys were rock stars to me as a kid. And I'm growing up in a time where, hunting wasn't really cool. It was really not something that everybody thought, like now it was really a cool thing to do. So, but I was just enthralled by it because of my early, duck hunting days. And coming to Texas with the whole goose hunting thing opened up to me. You could sit outside, October afternoon at our house in Houston and watch just literally thousands and thousands of snow geese migrating over and into the prairies southwest of Houston. And so that was, to me, it was just enthralling, and I had to be a part of it. So fast forward, I come back to Texas after working for my uncle in construction, and I was working at some other stuff there. But I decided I really wanted to be a guide. Just something I really, really wanted to do. So I went to a hunting show down at the Astor Hall, which is right next to the Houston Astrodome. And everybody who was everybody in the waterfowl business was there. And I met some people and ended up talking to a guy named Bob. Oh, gosh. What was Bob's last name? I cannot remember it, but Bob was the manager for an outfit called Texas Waterfowl Outfitters. And they I was out of nowhere. I had no connections to anybody there. I didn't really know what I was doing as far as, I knew how to hunt and how to kill birds, but I didn't have any idea how to be a guide. But those guys agreed to, let me help out and, do some work with them and stuff like that and get my feet wet and go out with some of the other guides and just to see if I could do it. So that's where that all started. And I ended up guiding for TWO for a couple of years and ended up being a full-time guide later on down there in El Campo, Texas. And for a different outfit, but a guy who had been the manager at TWO before, a guy named Tony Hurst. It was Paradise Hunting Club. Great group of guys I guided with down there. It was a blast. But that's where I ended up staying was down in that area for a while, and then came back to Mississippi later on. But El Campo, is where I met my wife. It was where I really kind of felt like I grew up as a person and as a man was down there, and you learn a lot about yourself out there in the field guiding people. You really do. You really learn a lot about who you are and how much you can take in, down there in the mud. And I mean, it was just, guiding geese in those days, especially, was just an absolute grind. I mean, we would, wake up at 4, take the guys out, put out 1,000 windsocks, hunt till noon, pick it up, get out that afternoon, scout, and do it all over again, sometimes 15, 20 days in a row. And like I said, you just really learn a lot about yourself. But, I wouldn't trade those days for anything in the world because, it was just a fantastic time. And I was young and, the geese were plentiful and it was just a great experience.
You probably have a very special place in your heart for snow geese then, I imagine.
I hate those jokers with a passion, man. I like to take a flamethrower to them, and just watch them burn and scream for the most part. Because, when you hunt them that hard, like I did, man, I mean, they get you a lot more than times than you get them. I mean, there can't be anything harder to guide for in the world than snows, especially blowing mouth calls and hunting with windsocks. And, man, having just grind it out on those jokers. And, like I said, for every day that you really got into them, and got a little bit of revenge, they would really punch you in the guts otherwise. So, it's a love-hate relationship for sure for me and snows.
They are erratic birds.
Yeah, the most unpredictable bird there is. When we were talking about, DTV doing the snow goose episode, I was like, man, I was telling the guys to moose, I'm like, snow geese scare me to death because they're so unpredictable. I don't have any clue. And I really didn't want to do one much down here. I wanted to go farther up the flyway. Those birds can be easier to deal with when they're migrating. But then when the deal came up with Tony, and like I said, if anybody there is in the business that I trust to really, be able to put people on birds, is Tony Vandemore. So that just worked out perfectly. But like I said, they made me nervous, man. I just got too much experience with them.
Yeah. So transitioning back into DUTV, in your time there, do you have any favorite episodes that you've been a part of, or any stories or anything that just kind of sticks out to you as maybe your favorite moment or favorite episode since your time is there?
Oh, wow. There was, we did an episode, which actually turned into 2 last year, with a guy named Joe Reddy in Oklahoma. And if you saw it last year, you saw those episodes. It was in Oklahoma, at a little piece of land. I say, it's 120 something acres. I mean, compared to some of the, giant, rice country and stuff we hunt in Arkansas and stuff like that, it's pretty small. But it's just a little small place that he has been cultivating for the past 20 years. And Joe Reddy is one of those guys that you meet and you just immediately like him. I mean, Joe is one of those really, really charismatic personalities. And he was just so much fun to be around and so much fun to hunt with. And what's crazy, not crazy, it makes perfect sense, is that, it lives in a little bitty town, about 3,000 people, called Chandler, Arizona. And Joe's consistently one of the top producing DU chapters in the entire state of Oklahoma, because he's got people coming from all over the place around Oklahoma City and the surrounding area to go to his chapter banquet because he's such a show himself.
Mm-hmm.
So we captured a little bit of that in those episodes, but before that, it was just hunting. It could have been, the weather was perfect, everything lined up. This was the first episode that I'd ever gone on. The co-host for that episode is Doug Larson, and Doug and I have since become good friends. Doug is a really great guy, great writer, a guy who's traveled all over the world, and I respect a great deal. Just talked to Doug today, as a matter of fact, about an upcoming deal that we're trying to do, but he was there, and we got some fantastic hunting. It was mallards and pintails and green-winged teal in the sunshine, and we were able to make 2 episodes out of it, which is hard to do. You're trying to put 40 plus minutes of video on there and make it exciting. So that's really, so far, what I've been involved with has been one of my favorites.
It's funny that you should pick Oklahoma, because I can tell you right now, by far, my favorite episode of DUT ever was in Oklahoma. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Jordan and I both have waterfowl YouTube channels that are relatively successful. And the name of my YouTube channel is Freelance Duck Hunting. And the first time I ever heard that phrase was Wade Bourne. Now, Jordan and I are both public land duck hunters. So for me, when DUTV does do public land hunts, I much prefer it just because I relate to it more. I'm a public land duck hunter. And Wade Bourne, you guys were hunting down there, and I think it was Lake Eufaula. And Wade Bourne was using the phrase freelance duck hunting throughout that entire episode. And they went back in on the lake, and they found a little pothole that was just kind of off by itself. And I don't think they shot a limit, but there was just something about, first of all, Wade Bourne was just the way he carried himself, the way he talked about hunting, the relationship he showed with his son. He was the draw to me during that time frame, was watching him, and I read some of his articles. I just loved him. And that episode just encompassed everything I loved about public land duck hunting. So when I went to start my YouTube channel, I named it Freelance Duck Hunting based on that one episode. And it's been a while, but I would still go back, and I probably watched that single episode 7 or 8 times, and it just really, really impacted me.
Well, that's fantastic, man. I've heard a lot of stories about that. The UTV has really had an impact on people, and we're very, very proud of that. And Wade was one of those great characters in waterfowling. He really was. And actually, we're doing a DU film, a tribute to Wade this year, and we're still putting that together right now. We've got to go up here in March to meet with his wife and his son and one of his best friends. We're gonna do the interviews and shoot everything in Wade's office right there in his home. Wow. And put together some, like I said, folks just talk about Wade and what kind of man he was, and we're gonna use some old clips from the show integrated into the film, and I think it's gonna be a really nice moment for folks, because Wade was such an icon. It was such a big blow to the show when Wade suddenly passed, and he just left a huge void that we're still trying to fill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I honestly, I kind of stopped watching the show for a little while when he wasn't on it anymore. I didn't make a conscious decision to do it, but his presence was just, I think the whole waterfowl community was kind of mourning.
I agree. Like I said, it was a huge hole left in that deal. And, Wade, I didn't know Wade well, but I knew him some, from my days at Avery, talking about snow goose hunting and stuff. He actually interviewed me for a couple of articles he wrote for the magazine on snow goose hunting. So I had dealt with him that way. But, what a fantastic guy and a great writer as well.
Yeah. Well, before some of us start crying here thinking about Wade Bourne, let's move on. Another question I really am curious is, how do you guys pick your hunt locations, and specifically, how do you pick a good mix between public land, private land? I'm sure you guys all have a meeting and sit down, where should we target? How do you kind of develop what you want to do as far as the locations?
Well, like I said, a lot of it, I just, sit down and think about, like I said before, what would be something that I would like to see on the show. And that's really kind of where I developed the idea for the Arizona show this past year, talking about public land, because all that hunt takes place on public lands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, I just never seen that before. I've never seen, a show take place, in really what's a desert, but it's a desert that has these wetlands that are oases in that desert, which really concentrate all of the birds in that area into that one spot or several spots. And these are wildlife management areas primarily that we hunted on. And, so it's just ideas. Really, it's where it starts with me. Then I run it past, different people, the folks at Moose Media, our production company there. Moose is actually a Mossy Oak division. And then my boss and some other folks in communications, we just take a look at, would this be a good idea? What's the story really behind it? Who are we going to have on it to really tell? Also, have a good duck hunting story, but a good conservation story as well. So it's a community. It's a collective effort. But it already kind of starts with me just asking myself that question: where would I like to go, and what would I like to see?
Yeah. Now, I'm a little biased on this next question. I'm a Kansas hunter. I grew up in central Kansas. I'm kind of out on the plains, and I'm on the eastern side of the state, which is a mix of more reservoirs and a little bit of timber. And I know DU has been to Kansas a lot. In fact, there was one season about 5 or 6 years ago, I think, where it was like 4 of the episodes were in Kansas. But one thing I would love to see is a central Kansas shallow marsh public land hunt. And I don't, if DU's been there, I don't recall it. Something like, I'm sure you're aware of Cheyenne Bottoms or something of that nature. If you guys could ever get out to that area, it's just spectacular. That would be a phenomenal. There's so much history involved in it, and it's the biggest inlet marsh in the United States. Just a wonderful place.
Yeah, and that diet did definitely come up. And I spent some time in Kansas mid-January this year. Actually, we put together a media hunt. That's another part of my job in communications too, is working with some of the print media guys. And we were there. I'm trying to remember the name of the little town we were close to. Anyway, what I really noticed though, what really hit me about Kansas is Kansas reminds me of what really Mississippi and Arkansas used to be, because we were there 3 days. I saw one flock of gadwalls, one ringneck, and one group of green-winged teal, and every other duck that we saw was a mallard.
Yeah.
That's what you used to see down there 15, 20, 30 years ago, was you would have to really hunt around and search for another kind of duck besides the mallard. And those mallards have seemed to have stayed more north and west than they used to. And that's, the flyways are dynamic, they're not static. And so, people complain about it. Good Lord knows at DU, we've heard it all about, short stopping. That seems to be a really, really big phrase for people. But I think it's just a shift, naturally. That's just, the mallard population, a lot of it winters farther north and west than it used to.
I've heard that it's that it's the heated ponds.
Yeah, I love that deal. Yeah, the heated hot cropping, that's another really buzzword people like to use, I've heard all these crazy stories about the DU has got all these giant heated ponds and all this stuff. Like we've just got these, this massive amount of money to create these massive oases and keep them open and all that stuff. And, it's just, to me, it's just crazy, what we do is wetlands, restoration, enhancement, things like that. We don't have the resources to try to concentrate a bunch of ducks to keep people from hunting them. That just seems to be a crazy notion that I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, it seems to me, as always, it's all about weather patterns. It's all about weather patterns.
That's true. And I was talking about that early time when I was a kid. And it seemed like it was always cold in Mississippi, and it was every time we went out there was never this 65-degree rise in the temperatures for a few days. It was always seemed to be pretty steady, and that's what I've seen over the last few years too. Just like that trip to Kansas is a prime example. When we got there, we had snow came in. I think it snowed 6-7 inches. Of course, for me, a guy who lives here, in the Memphis area, that's a blizzard. Okay, but by the time we left, let's see, I think that was Saturday. By the time we left the state on Tuesday, it was 65 degrees and there wasn't a speck of snow to be found. So what I don't see anymore is that enduring stretches of cold weather anymore. You'll get fronts, and you get an initial blast of cold air, but within a few days it goes straight back up. So talking to Doug Larson, he lives in Pennsylvania, but he hunts a lot in Ohio. And also, one of the addition we haven't talked about this year, talk about co-hosts. Fred Zink is now part of DUTV, and he did several episodes, and actually Freddie's going to be the host on this Habitat Flats shoot that we're doing right now. But Fred was talking about it too, that the Great Lakes really have no ice on them whatsoever, and those lakes are supposed to be frozen in right now. This in February, and they're wide open. So you're seeing some weather anomalies that I think has really, really affected the migration.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've got a friend lives up in Wisconsin, and I know multiple years out of the last 5, he's like, we can't do any ice fishing up here, And you got guys down south crying and whining about the U. It's like, just look at the weather. All you have to do is look at the typical weather versus this year. There's your answer, and I'll just quit your crying, move north. I think that's why Kansas is such a wonderful place, because starting in September with teal, there's always ducks in Kansas. They never get all the way south of us. And if they do, you're talking a massive, massive cold blast where everything's frozen. And as soon as that ice comes up, you've got hundreds of thousands of birds. So I think that this, Missouri, Kansas, it's a real good area as far as not too cold, not too hot, always kind of birds mingling in there. So we don't really ever have just horrible years where the birds don't come south, or we don't have horrible years where they stay up north. It's kind of in that pocket,
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's like I said, those areas have really become what the deep south was. Areas like famous areas like Stuttgart, Arkansas. Which still has some pretty good duck hunting, but it's a much more inconsistent than it was 20 years ago. And like I said, if you really want consistent hunting, like I said, Kansas really would, and Oklahoma too, would be 2 states that I would say those are the states that you really need to be in now.
Yeah, good state. I was down around Stuttgart with Joel Strickland at Cypress Crossings around Christmas. I was down there filming some stuff with Joel, and we did okay, but a couple of days it was 60, 62 degrees. Like, well, it kind of makes it a little bit tough.
Ain't that the truth? And of course, once again this year we had an ocean of water. I mean, there's so much water around right now. I know the farmers are probably just almost in panic mode. Because the pattern wind right now, it'll be dry for a couple of days, rain for 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. Dry for a couple of days, rain for 3 or 4. There's so much water. The rivers are all out big time. All the fields are just completely saturated. I know they got to be getting nervous. I mean, it's getting close to March at this point, and I don't see any way they're going to plant. I don't know if they could plant within the next month, really.
Yeah. Well, that's how we were here in Kansas last year. We were in full flood stage for 6 straight months. And, man, talk about lack of duck habitat, at least on the east side of the state.
Yeah, that's true. And I made a trip. Like I said, I'm a Mississippi State grad. I went to the College World Series in Omaha back this past June. And I got to, drive through and see some of that flooding up there in the Midwest from the Missouri River. Man, I was just like blown away. And I went back up through that same corridor going to North Dakota in September, and nothing had changed. I mean, that water was all still there, and I was just like, wow. When is this water ever going to go away? It
didn't go away until mid-October.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I know I-29 was flooded in different stages all over the place going through there.
Yeah, we had to travel west to have any success at all, and then on this east side, it was just the crops were bad, the habitat was bad, and the ducks were. I don't know if they. I'm sure some of them went farther into Missouri and some of them went out west, but man, they sure were avoiding us.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and yeah, they got to go somewhere, for sure. So you're probably right. They probably just went both ways, and you know, because I don't think they really went south from what I saw.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of wrap up the DUTV talk. What is there any plans that you have in the future, or progressions, or that you would like to see the show make, or what can we expect from DUTV over the next year, 2, 3 years?
Well, you know, I think one thing that we've really been looking at is the progression of outdoor television and where it's headed. You know, I don't know if the current format of, you know, basically there's 3 different channels that are available either, you know, through cable or satellite. A lot of what we're looking at now is maybe it would be best to be a more of a streaming service type deal. We're already on the site and we already have a YouTube channel, you know, with something like, you know, for say Netflix or something like that be better. You know, there's already a couple of hunting shows on there, Meat Eater being one that currently comes to mind. So you know, we're really trying to examine, is that the future direction we want to take, you know, away from, you know, more of a traditional outdoor channel, because, you know, the thought really is, are those channels going to be viable and going to be around 10 years from now? So we've got to be more proactive than reactive and figure out what direction we want to go in from there. So, yeah, it's a lot to think about. You know, that's a show that's been basically, you know, a network type show since its inception in 1998. So you're talking about a pretty radical departure from what we've done in the past. But times change, things change, and so you've really got to roll with the punches.
Yeah, definitely an interesting perspective on that. So, you got any questions, or you think we should go ahead and jump into the lightning round?
Well, I certainly have exhausted all of my questions. I got to say, I've been talking to Jordan for about a year to try to get, you know, someone on from DUTV, and I reached out to a couple of the hosts personally, and finally I'm like, okay, we got to make this happen. So before we get in the lightning round, I just want to thank you for coming. And I got to say, we've done 128 some podcast episodes, and I told my wife, I said, I'm a little bit nervous before this one. This DUTV means there's been a lot in my life.
Well, man, Elliot, I appreciate that. You know, it's really great to hear from folks like yourself that are, you know, hardcore waterfowlers who've been involved with the sport and continue to be involved with it to this day, that the show has really made an impact on you. It's really good to hear.
It has always had a nostalgic feel to it that no other show had. Just the way the intros have been done and just the things that are discussed, it's separate from all of our other hunting shows, and the way it makes you feel and the history of waterfowling and the nostalgia. It's certainly one of a kind. That's for sure.
Well, thanks, man. We really are proud of that show, and just, you know, look forward to continuing it as long as folks, you know, want to see it.
All right, awesome. Jordan, you ready for lightning round?
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So, John, just real quick, the lightning round, quick questions with quick answers. Just a fun little speed round that we play to kind of hear a little bit more about your hunting style. So, first off, 20 gauge or 12 gauge?
28 gauge.
28 gauge. I think that's a first. Awesome. And then what type of ammo do you run?
Oh, man, basically I still shooting steel, but I started shooting more business rounds, specifically boss last year because I've heard so much about it. And I tell you what, from what I shot with it, I was real pleased with it. Awesome.
And then on your boss shot shells, for what are you running for ducks as far as shot size?
I shot those 2 3/4 inch number 5s, which seems to be like, you know, the go-to round everybody was really loving, so I had to try it.
Awesome. Actually, Elliot and I both ran the same shell for ducks.
It works. I know that. I can tell people right now. If you want to have something that's more like traditional lead was, and I used when I was a kid, that's the closest thing I've really shot to it.
Awesome. And
yeah, this is working out perfect because Boss is a partner of the podcast, and then Avery is a partner of the podcast as well. So just everyone knows, we did not prep him as to who our sponsors were at all. This is all natural conversation.
Yeah. We never really got to touch on my Avery days. That was some crazy times, but I was there for 11 years.
Well, we would certainly love to have you on again at a later time to hit even more.
Yeah, we can talk about that. That's a whole other podcast, really.
And then, do you have a preference on ducks or geese?
Oh, man. The younger version of myself would have said geese all day long. The older version is duck.
Awesome. I think I can agree with you on that one. Although this year, well, yeah, they're both fun to shoot. There's no doubt about that. So
yeah.
And then, do you wear a face mask, face paint, or nothing?
Nothing really.
Nothing. Alrighty. And beard or no beard?
No beard.
Alrighty. And Elliot's favorite question: what type of choke do you run?
I like the Rob Roberts chokes, specifically the T3s. When I first talked to Rob about it, I said, "Man, I either want to hit them and kill them dead, or miss them clean." He said, "Well, you need the T3." So that's what I stuck with.
So that's like a full choke then?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I like to shoot that joker as tight as I can. Like I said, just would rather miss them clean or kill them dead. The crippling birds just kills me.
I've got one for you. When you hear people call snow geese sky carp, what are your thoughts?
I always thought that was pretty hilarious, and I never heard that until I guess I came back to Mississippi. Because over there in Texas, they were pretty much revered. I mean, because so many folks come from all over the country. I hunted with people from everywhere to hunt to kill snows, and the notion that they were some sort of just inferior bird, and another thing too. That's really kind of got me is that their taste is bad. And I tell you what, I've eaten snows, man. I've cooked those things every which way you can possibly think of. And I have actually I got my own recipe that I had published. It's a barbecued snow goose enchilada.
That sounds delicious.
That's, outstanding, man. But I'll have to get you all the recipe. But yeah, so the sky carp to me is laughable. I just think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Amen. Correct answer.
So don't they? I mean, kind of to add on to that, don't a lot of people say that, like speckle belly? I've heard people call speckle belly, ribeye of the sky, and sandhill cranes, but just speckle belly. I mean, they don't seem that different of a bird from a snow. I mean, I know they're different.
They're really not. I mean, once again, I've eaten both of those birds extensively, and there really is very little difference between the snow goose and the speck. They're living in the same areas, feeding in the same fields. Once again, I don't know where that connotation came from that snow geese were not fit to eat. It just doesn't. I swear, I think you could take snows and tell people they were specks, and people would eat them up, like there's no tomorrow. I think it's almost a mental thing for people that they have in their mind that they're already predisposed, they're not going to be any good. But I tell you what, you were talking about the sandhill crane. I would take every goose and just and do away with them if I could eat sandhill cranes every day. And sandhill is by far the best waterfowl there is.
Mm.
Never tasted it.
Me either.
Oh man, y'all got to do that. It's really hard to describe. I mean, they're that much better than any Dutch juice I've ever had.
Is the color of the meat the same? Is it still a real dark red, or is it light?
It is. It is a dark red, but it's got a different flavor to it. and it's been a while since I've been able to, once I left Texas, I kind of left my sandhill crane hunting behind. Came over, back over this way. There's a few draw hunts in Tennessee now for sandhills, but other than that, there's no sandhill open season. When I was down there for that DUTV episode on the coast, I was staying with a good friend of mine that lives down there still, and man, there were cranes everywhere, and I was just looking around and I'm going, man, unbelievable. And I just didn't have time to mess with the cranes, but I wanted to badly. It was just to eat some again.
Great. Jordan, we got to get our hands on some. We've got sandhills in Kansas. It's just I don't have any idea how to hunt them or go about getting out.
I think, we're talking about DU Films too, there's also DU Films and there's DU Conserve Films we came out with last year. DU Conserve is a completely habitat-based film, and it's something we're really proud of. If you haven't seen those films, you need to check it out. But anyway, we're going to do one this year. We've got one more to shoot, and it's going to be on the Platte River in Nebraska, mid-March, when, pretty much at the peak of the sandhill migration, to really, capture that for people, and a lot of folks have never seen it, and I think it's going to be fantastic.
Awesome.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it does. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up the podcast for us. We really appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing a lot of your history and DU history, and just really interesting to hear all that, and I appreciate you coming on.
Guys, thank you very much. And like I said, if you want to do the Avery Outdoors podcast, we can dive off into that deal. And it was pretty fascinating. I was there. I started there in 2007, and was really kind of there at the very peak of what was really one of the most iconic brands of waterfowling history. And it was just a really cool experience to be in the middle of it.
Awesome.
That would be great.
That sounds like a great idea, and we'd love to have you back on.
All right. Thanks.
Yep. Alrighty, fellas. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm Jordan from Ducking Chronicles, Elliot from Freelance Duck Hunting, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Alrighty, that's a wrap. Thanks, everybody on the live stream, for tuning in. We're going to go ahead and sign off on here as well. And appreciate all the comments. We'll go back through those and check them out when we get a chance. And thanks for tuning in for the behind the scenes of the podcast recording. We'll see you guys next week.